actually am going to be going all the way to the beginning of my life. I actually was called a problem child before I was born. How do you even achieve that, right? I wasn't even born and this was happening. So what happened was, when my mom went into the doctor a week before I was born, they said, don't worry, Mrs. Chan, my mom. Don't worry, Mrs. Chan. Your child is going to be a perfect, easy birth. What the fuck's an easy birth, right? Like, clearly this is a male doctor, right? There's no person who's ever had a baby who's like, don't worry, easy birth, Mrs. Chan, easy, right? The week after happens, right? And then it's just like chaos. She goes in. They already had done the ultrasound the week before. It was everything perfect. She goes in, completely upside down I was. A breech baby, as they call any people in the healthcare industry. Oh, yes, all right. And what is your role? Oh, a nurse. Okay, cool. Because one time, front row, I said, are you a nurse to someone? They're like, I am a doctor. And they got super mad, and then we argued for like 5 minutes. So I'm glad that I didn't make assumptions. And thank you for all that you give the nurse, wonderful nurse. Lots of love, right? Hero in my heart. You know, thank you for all you do. And the doctor, though, goes and says, at that moment, Mrs. Chan, your child is completely upside down, breech baby. And before he even explains what's gonna happen, which is a C-section, my mom's like, is he gonna be okay? What's happening, right? Immediately, it was like, don't worry, Mrs. Chan, it's gonna still be an easy birth. This doctor was just so tied to this line of easy birth. How is a cesarean section an easy birth? And my mom's like, oh, what does that mean? She didn't know what it meant, right? Oh, we just have to do an incision. You mean cut me open? Like, what do you, like, my mom was just panicking at this moment, right? And then so they had to actually cut my mom open, and I don't know the exact, to pull me out of that. I have no idea the exact terms, guys. I have no idea, but somehow I had to come out of that incision, and this chaos, this panic that my mom was having, I ended up getting, you know, I was safe and everything, but the doctor, the easy birth dude, he ended up cutting my butt in the process. I've had people yell, prove it. So I have a cut on my butt, okay, right? I have a cut on my butt, and it actually is a lightning bolt shaped. Right? I told you. It's a great party trick. Not children's parties, though. And but it's a lightning bolt on my butt, and then people are always like, it's a Harry Potter scar, right? But the thing is, I was actually born before Harry Potter existed, so Harry Potter actually has an Anto Chan ass scar on his forehead, guys. That's what that is, right? I'm the original, right? And that's the thing, is my mom and I have like started in tumultuous times immediately. And everybody was always like, don't worry, he'll grow out of it. That's what they always like told my parents this, right? And then at age 2, we traveled all the way to Asia, China, and my mom was carrying me in her arms, and I shifted, moved, and then I ended up falling and hitting my head, and I had to get a stitch on my head. And then when they were trying to get her to come into the room because of the chaos of my birth, she said she was too emotional, that she couldn't be in there with me. And all she heard, I was 2 years old at the time, yelling, Mom, where are you, Mom? Like, that's the drama of my life, right? And she said that night, after I got this stitch in my head, I was already jumping on the couches and screaming, you don't want me! This is the chaos, guys, I'm telling you. I started in and continued it throughout my life. So, at a certain point, I was always like, had these attachment issues. How many people out there have attachment issues with their parents? Yeah, I love that we cheered from it. Here's the second cheer. How many of you are in therapy? Yeah, all right, therapy gang. We have gotten terrible, by the way, my therapy gang. We are becoming the next level evangelical Christians, where we judge everyone else for not being in therapy, right? We're like, why aren't you in therapy? And they're like, oh, I just can't afford it. We're like, oh yeah, whatever. You know, like we treat people worse because they're not in therapy. So if anybody out there is wanting to go to therapy, but you think you can't afford it, you got this, okay? Well, this is our year. You're gonna join us. We're gonna start. It's kind of a cult, guys. That's what I'm saying. But I'm very grateful in it. So I've had to go to lots of therapy, and I went to my therapist, and you tell me what you would think who this therapist would be. She tells me, you must tell the people you care about you love them. And I was like, that is probably some really good information before it's too late. I'm like, oh shit, that last part was pretty intense, right? But like, I don't think that she understood like how it works in Chinese families, right? This is clearly a white therapist, guys, is what I'm trying to tell you. Tell my parents I love them? Like, I immediately did it, right? I immediately went and I was like, I love you, you know, and I like would say it, and it's just like silence, like nobody, right? And I had to like take it to another level, like where I had to like really try to make it like intimate and connected. So my mom was watching her Korean soap operas with Chinese subtitles. I have no idea what's going on, right? I don't read Chinese characters. I don't understand Korean. I'm just sitting there pretending like I know I'll ask her, you know, every like 5 minutes, oh, so like, are those people dating? She's like, yes. And she's like so excited, right? So I was in her element. I was trying to wait for the perfect time. And I was like, Mom, I actually have something I need to tell you. And this was the first time. I had tried it already with my brother and my sister. You know, people my generation, maybe they'll say I love you back, right? But my mom, I was like nervous, like no idea how this is gonna go. Wait for her, Korean soap operas, Chinese subtitles, sitting on her lazy boy couch. I'm like, Mom, I actually like have something I need to tell you. She pauses. Turns her lazy boy chair over to me. I'm like, this is so much pressure right now. Like, she thinks that it's like, you know, someone got pregnant, you know, I'm dropping out of school, like something intense, right? And I'm just like, Mom, I just want you to know before it's too late. She's like, I love you. Just waiting for her to respond, and I'm like, no, I have to like hold this, right? And I was like, you know what? No, I'm gonna help her out. I'm gonna translate it into our mother tongue in this moment with my mother. I love puns that are connected, okay? Mother moment. Ngongoy le, mama. And she had the sweetest response. She doesn't say it back to me. She goes, okay, do you want some fruit? And she literally sprints out of the room, and I'm just staring at this frozen two people on the screen there, and I just hear her intensely cutting fruit downstairs, right? And she just like stumbles all the way back upstairs with this charcuterie board of not saying I love you back. I'm just like, okay, and then she's just like, so how's school? I'm like, what just happened? And we're just eating snow pears, and I'm like, oh, this is just like not how I envisioned it whatsoever, right? Just all these different flavors, and I have to eat them to be polite, and all I could think in my head is, damn you white therapist. No, you know, I'm just like, how did this happen, you know? So I went to my therapist and I explained what happened to her, and she's like, she'll come around. That was her advice, right? Lady of minimal words, she'll come around, you know? And it's always, by the way, I don't know if this happens to you, it's always that I'm crying at the end of my sessions and she'll just throw in the advice at the end there. And I'm like, just tell me this like 20 minutes ago. Jeez, right? So, over time, I was like, she's gonna come around. I'm a persistent person, right? So I just continuously told my mom I loved her every single time that I possibly can. She's washing the dishes. I'll pop out of nowhere. I love you, Mom. She's like, oh my goodness. The spoon, like, you know, water comes at her. She's like, oh, you know, like, surprise. But slowly, she would message me, LU, comma, Mom. that's how low the standard is that you guys awed that, right? Like that literally has how low the bar was for our immigrant parents, guys. That's what I'm saying at this moment, right? Oh, minor reciprocation of a nod, right? Yeah, it's okay. Came around, right? I just kept saying it, and she never would say it back, but I was like, no, one day it's gonna happen. And so I was on a date, it happened once, and it was wonderful. And she was over at my house, so it was like, third, fourth date. And we were on the couch, mouth licking, whatever people call making out, that's the one. I know it was embarrassing for me too. And it was really sweet. Like, it's just been weeks of just like, thinking about this person. I was so excited they're at my house. We're cooking a meal. It was just, everything was doing so well. And all I hear is my phone in my room because I didn't want to put it on the couch with me. I wanted it to be a private moment. All I hear is around 7:30 p.m. I just hear the ringer going off. And I was like, that's not those air duct assholes. They're off at 7. It's like, this has got to be my mom, right? So I go, I'm like, oh, actually, do you mind if I go and, I got to answer. This is probably my mom. I don't know if it's like an emergency. My date's like, no problem, go, it's fine. So I go to the room, pick up the phone. Before I can even say anything, my mom just jumps into worry. I don't know if any of your parents literally don't have any small talk. I'm like, you literally did nothing, you're retired, you have nothing to do all day, you can't even say hi, and then you just jump into worry. She's like, make sure you get your tires changed out because it's getting to winter time and we don't want it to slip. And I was like, okay, sure, like, cool, Mom. Like, and then she's like, make sure you get your windshield wipers changed out, because what if it's getting dark and then you can't see? And I was like, Mom, when did you become a mechanic? Like, what's happening right now? Why are we having this conversation? And then she's like, I'm just worried when you come back next week. And I was like, Mom, I'm actually on a date right now. She says, grandkids? Grandbabies, finally? I've never had someone so excited for the possibility of not pulling out. Like, that's just a really weird, uncomfortable thing that my mom is just so excited about. And I was like, no, Mom, it's like only the first month we've been seeing each other. It's pretty new, like, but I am excited about her, so I probably get back to her. I'm just gonna go. And she says, okay, son. I went click. I was already going. It's not like I heard it happening and I'm like, you know what? You didn't say it back, fuck you. Like, that's not what I was doing. It was like, I was already in the mode and I was like, oh my God. And I was just like so overwhelmed. I was like, this has been what I've been waiting for, like, literally this last entire year. Just building up to this moment, and I hung out, like, this is just metaphor for my whole life, you know what I mean? Like, everything I worked for. So I slowly go back to, like, my date, I'm hanging my head, and I'm like so sad, and she's like, is everything okay? And I was like, yeah, it's cool. It was just the air duct guys or whatever, you know? And she's like, no, what's going on, you know? And I was like, oh, okay. I've been trying to get my mom to say I love you back for, like, so long, and then she actually didn't even say it back. She was saying it first, and then I hung up on her. And my date's like, why did you do that? I was like, it's not like I did it on purpose, right? And then my date had the best idea that I couldn't even think of at that moment because I was so overwhelmed. She said, why don't you call her back? I was like, oh yeah, call her back. Like, literally didn't even come to my mind because I was just so emotional, right? So I was like, okay, yeah, call her back. So I go mosey back into my room shamefully, and I was like, okay, I gotta call her back. Okay, hi Mom, how's it going? And she's like, oh. And before I even started about what was going on before, she jumped into the biggest worry I've ever heard her say. And I say it's the biggest worry, not stakes-wise, but literally why it's the lowest stakes with the highest emotion I've ever seen. She says, make sure you shovel the front area. It was no snow on the front, by the way. She said, when it starts snowing, make sure you shovel the front area, because if someone's walking by and they slip, they're gonna end up suing us, then we're gonna lose the house, and then we're actually not gonna have you live there, but you can move home if you want to. It's like, what are these steps that just happened? Like, what is going on? And I was like, no, okay, thanks for the advice, Mom, because at that point I was like, no, let's get on the same page here. Thanks for the advice, I appreciate that. You were gonna tell me something before, what happened. And she's like, oh, yeah, no, yeah, oh. And she got like super uncomfortable, right? So I thought that I would, get it rolling. I was like, I love you, Mom. And like before this long wait, and I'm like, okay, breaking the silence, mother tongue, Ngongoile, mama. I knew it was coming this time. I was so excited. And then you know what she says? She says, good. Bye. And hangs up. I say, I love you. I translated it, and then she says goodbye. Well, sure, there was a break in between the two words, but she said goodbye, right? And then I go back out into, like, my date is now on this couch, and I'm just so flustered. And I was like, oh my God, what is going on? And my date's, like, talking to me, and I'm trying to, like, be social and all this stuff, but all I could think about is my mom, which is never good on a date, right? And then my date says to me, through all of the chaos, she says to me, is there anything I can do? And when somebody says, is there anything I can do? For normal people, that's like, yeah, actually, let's like have a meal and like, move on, whatever. I was like, anything? And she's like, anything. And I would say half the people in this room probably thought something extremely dirty. But the other half, what actually happened was I was like, are you gonna tell me you love me tonight? And she's like, well, no, because like we just started seeing each other. I was like, it's Toronto. Like, come on, it's been a month, all right? Like, it's possible, right? And then she's like, well, no, I'm not gonna tell you I love you tonight, but like, we could have a nice meal. And I was like, I think you gotta go home. I literally kicked out a person because I was so emotionally I love that there was a single clap because maybe that person knows the social destruction that I went through at that moment, right? And I was like, I think you gotta go home right now. And then she was like, you know what? I understand. Right? How sweet is this human being that I was on this date with, right? Nobody could believe this ever, right? And everybody was like, well, what happened later with her, right? And obviously, like, I called her later and everything was fine, so don't come to me after the show and be like, you should find this person. It already ran its course, guys, okay? So don't worry about it. It's all good. But after this entire situation happened, all I could think about was like, when is it gonna happen? When is my mom gonna tell me that she loves me? And then she ended up having like a really serious health scare last year. And all the like preparation heading back to Ottawa where my family is, what I ended up doing was I made sure that I got my windshield wipers changed. I made sure I got my like tires changed out. I literally did everything on her list of things to like work. I was out there shoveling like less than an inch of snow and I was like, no, I gotta do this just because of that. And I was on my way home, and all I could think about was her, and I was like, you know what? If she never tells me that she loves me, that's totally okay, because she shows me all the time, right? Just different love languages, no problem. I've just accepted it. I'm just gonna make my way there. I get to the hospital, and I'm just overwhelmed with emotion. I'm like, what? I don't know if she's okay or not. Like, my dad says that he's been there, for the last 2 days. He's been by her side. I haven't been able to get a hold of him that day. I show up at the hospital. And there's doctors all around my mom's chair that she was sitting in. And then there's all these doctors that are doing all this stuff. And then my mom stands up. And everybody's like, whoa, don't stand. Oh, and then she just says it across the room. She says, I love you, Ming. And everything that I was saying to myself before this of like, it doesn't matter if she tells me or not, all of that just out the door because I needed to hear it so badly. And I had no idea how bad I needed it, but she said it. And at that moment, it was just this incredibly beautiful moment. And she just pushes my dad out of the way so that we can embrace and we have this huge hug. And then the doctors and everybody was like, oh, gets out of the room. And we're just holding each other, loving each other. And then my dad was like, he kind of gave us some space. She sits back down. And then I didn't know what to say. And I was just like, Mom, do you want this fruit cup? It's got cherries and peaches. And I realized at that moment, when someone is so intensely wanting you to respond in a certain way, it's not so easy, right? And so for me, I got it at that moment. And now, every time that I see her with my nieces, my nephews, and she's always telling them, I love you to them, and she says it so openly to my family members and everything, all I could think in my head is, you're welcome, Mom. You're welcome. We're breaking intergenerational traumas through these words. So thank you guys so much. Tell the people that you love them. Good night, guys.